Hey, it's Matthew Decker with Leveraged Wealth Management. Today we're going to be talking about an application of life insurance, specifically cash value life insurance, that often goes completely unnoticed or really undiscussed. And it's a strategy that we've used in our practice here for several years, but it's one that we think should get a little bit more airtime. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention today. And that strategy is basically using life insurance as a way to conduct forward-thinking Roth conversions. So one of the best assets you can own, in our opinion, is a Roth IRA. And why is that? Well, because it's going to grow tax-free, it's going to come out tax-free, and inside that Roth IRA, you can invest in risky assets. And so you should expect a higher rate of return if you're investing in risky assets inside your Roth IRA. And it's just simply something that is more difficult to do in a cash value life insurance policy. And that is get risky, essentially. Take more risk for a higher rate of return. And so we love Roth IRAs. One of the challenges with Roth IRAs is for our high income earners. It's very difficult to get into a Roth IRA if you make too much money. You can always do, backdoor Roth conversions, but what we found over the years is those backdoor Roth conversions are too small and insignificant for high income earners over the long run. We need a better way to get money kind of over the tax fence into Roth assets. And so what a lot of people start doing is, as they approach retirement, they start doing Roth conversions, converting their qualified assets into Roth dollars. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. In fact, I've got a whole video on the right way and the wrong way to do Roth conversions. This video is actually kind of the precursor to doing a Roth conversion. That is, if we set the stage properly, if we build the right foundation, we can convert assets over the tax fence from qualified to Roth assets very easily with much less negative impact from taxes, but we have to be forward thinking in how we're going to approach that. So I'm going to share my screen and kind of go through this idea of forward thinking Roth conversions. So let's start with a really simple question, and that is, why in the world should you consider doing a Roth conversion on some of your assets? And I think the answer to that is pretty simple. So I pulled this from the usdebtclock.org. We've got our US national debt, and that number is staggering, $27 trillion in total US national debt. But that $27 trillion isn't even really the biggest problem. See, the way that this US debt clock basically logs our national debt is it tells us how much of our debt is, due and payable outstanding today. But what it doesn't account for is things that we've promised to pay in the future but aren't currently paying on now. And those things that we've promised to pay in the future but we aren't paying on now, those are called future unfunded liabilities. Future unfunded liabilities is largely made up of things like future Medicare, future Social Security, interest on debt, things of that nature. Our future unfunded liabilities at this point in time is north of $150 trillion. So $27 trillion currently outstanding now in our national debt, $150 trillion we've already promised to pay in the future, many of that in the form of entitlement programs that really aren't going anywhere. So the question that we then have to ask is, how in the world are we going to pay for these future unfunded liabilities? And there are really only two ways that we can pay for these future unfunded liabilities without completely going in and getting our politicians to agree to cut entitlement programs, which is probably not happening. The only way that we can pay for these future unfunded liabilities is two options. And the first one is going to be, well, we can spend less money. So the question becomes, can we spend enough money to pay for $150 trillion of future unfunded liabilities? Maybe, maybe not. I've got an opinion on that. I'm sure you do as well. The other option would be, well, we can tax more. So we can spend less, we can tax more. And the reality is we're probably going to need a combination of those two things in order to accomplish paying for those future unfunded liabilities. Because really, mathematically speaking, there's almost no way that we can spend less enough to cover our ever-growing debt. In fact, if we cut our spending in half and then cut our spending in half again, and then saved 50% of our tax revenue on top of cutting our spending in half twice, we could pay off our debt in 50 years. Now that's another way of saying there's no way that we can pay for our future unfunded liabilities without taxing more. Spending less is not the solution to this problem. It never was. It can't be simply from a math standpoint. We're in an environment where taxes absolutely are going to have to go up at some point in time. And really the math is pretty clear on this. Because it seems so likely that we have to increase taxes in order to cover our ever-mounting debt burdens, we think that converting assets into Roth dollars is one of the absolute best things you can do. And now anybody can do that at any point in time. You simply have to pay the taxes in order to convert your qualified money over into Roth assets. And we think that's a strategy absolutely worth pursuing. So if it's a strategy worth pursuing, what is the best way to convert our money into a Roth? You could certainly convert your Roth dollars while you're still working, although that can be pretty painful because if you're working, you're presumably earning an income. And if you're earning an income, that means any Roth conversions that you do are going to be tacked on top of your earned income from a tax standpoint. So if you're already, let's just say, in the 24% tax bracket, any Roth conversions that you do are going to start at the 24% bracket and work their way up. So while it sounds like it's a great idea to be doing these Roth conversions, and obviously the earlier you start, assuming that's when you're working, the younger that you can start, the longer you can stretch these Roth conversions out. But if you're working and earning a good income, you're starting probably in a relatively high tax bracket in order to do these Roth conversions. And we think that there's actually a better way to do Roth conversions. The other common way to start doing Roth conversions would be, well, I'm going to wait until I retire and then I'll start converting my qualified assets over into some kind of Roth account. But even once you do retire, if you don't have a large portion of tax-free dollars already set aside or a large portion of cash already set aside, you're still going to have income that's taxed at ordinary income rates in retirement. That is, if you've done a good job saving money, if you have qualified accounts, you're presumably drawing down on those qualified accounts in order to sustain your lifestyle. And so whether you wait until you're retired or you do it while you're working, you're still going to be starting at a tax bracket. You're not going to be starting at the $0 tax bracket, right? You're going to be starting somewhere higher than that, and anything you convert gets tacked on at the end of the year. And so it becomes expensive from a tax standpoint to doing Roth conversions, and that's exactly why we came up with these thoughtful Roth conversions. Our thoughtful Roth conversions is really built on this one principle, and that is we need to build an unlimited additional source of tax-free income in order to supplement our Roth conversions in retirement. So I'd like to show you an example of exactly what that's going to look like. So we will look at a $1 million example in this case. So we've got $1 million and we're going to do a forward-thinking, non-qualified asset reposition. And so the way that this is going to work is we're going to take $1 million and we're going to pay that $1 million in to an index universal life insurance contract over 5 years. Now this generates a really large death benefit, but the reason we're doing this is because we want this pot of money to grow tax-free and be accessed tax-free later on in retirement. Again, this is an index universal life insurance policy. So we're taking non-qualified assets, brokerage accounts, cash accounts, something that's not in a 401k IRA, we're getting it into a tax-free vehicle. Because if you're a high income earner, you can't just put that type of money into a Roth. You have to put it into something else like a cash value life insurance policy as a tax-free vehicle. So we're taking that $1 million, positioning it into a tax-free vehicle so that when we get to retirement, let's just say at age 62, we're going to start doing Roth conversions. And when we start doing those Roth conversions, we're going to shut off all of our income from all sources except this index universal life insurance policy. And we're going to draw out $180,000 a year tax-free, non-reportable to the IRS. And while we draw out this $180,000 a year of tax-free distributions from our life insurance policy, these are the years where we're going to start doing our Roth conversions. And if we do this right, if we draw out 180 from this policy without any taxable implications, once we start doing our Roth conversions, we actually are starting at a $0 tax bracket, right? Because you have no other income. We've structured it in a way so that this is your only income, and these are the years where we're going to start doing Roth conversions. So for example, I've got a blank sheet of paper here so that we can kind of look at this. So we start our $180,000 income from our IUL at age 62, and these are the years where we start converting money. So maybe $100,000 a year. It could be really anything. It could be whatever you want it to be. But the point is, this $100,000 a year, if you're married filing jointly, your exemption is going to come right off the top. And so if you got a $24,000 exemption right away, you're not at $100,000, you're at $76,000 in taxable income, but that 76 starts at the 0% tax bracket. So if we go back to our tax brackets that we had here earlier in our presentation, if we're converting $76,000 a year, we're staying in the 12% tax bracket. If we tried to convert $100,000 and we were making $100,000 of income, we're starting in the 22% tax bracket and we're getting into the 24% tax bracket. So by doing this, building a source of unlimited tax-free income in order to use it as our sole source of income for the first several years of retirement, and then strategically doing Roth conversions from any of our qualified accounts while we draw income from our tax-free stream of from our tax-free index universal life insurance policy or any cash value life insurance policy, doesn't matter which one it is. If we structure our Roth conversion that way, we're saving a boatload of dollars in taxes. We're probably saving north of $130,000 in taxes just by how we take this money out and when we choose to start doing the Roth conversions. Again, it doesn't take much math to know that if we start converting assets in a 22% tax bracket or if we start at a 0% tax bracket, you'd much rather start at a 0% tax bracket and work your way through to the 12, to the 22, to the 24 versus starting at the 24 and then getting into 30, 32, 34. So this is a phenomenal strategy. You just have to start early. You have to start building your tax-free bucket of income from non-qualified assets while you're young, let it grow, and then by the time you're ready to retire, you've got a huge bucket of money that you can draw from tax-free, and in those years, do your Roth conversions. And if you do that strategy correctly, you might be able to get to retirement and not pay any taxes at all once you're done converting your Roth assets or your qualified assets into Roth assets. But the strategy doesn't stop there, because by nature of this index universal life insurance policy, we take out that 180 for those first 10 years or so, do our Roth conversions, but this policy is still going to be able to kick out additional tax-free income along with the assets that you would be able to tap now in your Roth accounts moved over from your qualified accounts. And that, in our minds, is a forward-thinking Roth conversion. See, gone are the days where you have to convert all your Roth assets all at once or over a period of 3 to 5 years while you're working or when you're first retired. If we can think ahead, if we can plan ahead, this is a macro view of taxation. If we can take a step back and look at the big picture, look at where tax rates are likely to go in the future based on our current future unfunded liabilities and how much money our government is printing on a daily basis, and if we can start building a tax-free vehicle, it's going to supplement all the Roth conversions that you're going to want to do once you get into retirement. And doing it right, you can save a boatload of money on your taxes by building up a cash value life insurance policy now to supplement your income while you do your Roth conversions in those first 10 to 15 years of retirement. So if you want more information on how to set up kind of this forward-thinking Roth conversion strategy, I'm going to put a link in the description below, or you can click on the card on top of this video. It'll take you to our website where you can apply for a coaching session where you can kind of go through your goals, what you're trying to do, and whether or not this strategy is going to be a fit for you based on your age and your time horizon. So hopefully this has been helpful. If you want more information on Roth conversions, I've got another video that I'll link at the end of this, but it's just a primer on what not to do and what to do if you're going to convert qualified assets assets into Roth assets. And the best case scenario is to start early with a cash value life insurance policy to supplement your Roth conversions once you get into retirement. This has been Matthew Decker, Leverage Wealth. I look forward to talking with you soon. Take care.